Hi, and welcome to my new YouTube channel. I am Luz. I am 22 years old, and I've always wanted to have a YouTube channel because I always felt like I had something to say, but I never knew what it was. And if I'm honest, I still don't, but I figured with the year we've had, why not start? And you know, you may join me in this journey of figuring it all out. Um, I want to start off by acknowledging the year we've had and offering and giving my condolences to people who have lost someone or, you know, people in general, and those who are going through financial burden or those who have been mentally, physically, um, just anyone who's been affected by this virus and everything that's happened this year. Um, I think we all deserve a big pat on the back for dealing with just being human right now. Um, so yeah, I think that I will start off by telling you guys my story, just kind of my childhood and, you know, not everything, but some of the things that have shaped me greatly, just so you guys can get a feel of what I'm trying to do with this channel and what I'm trying to do for myself through this channel. But yeah, so this is a story of a girl who was looking for love in all the wrong places. I'm kidding. Well, kind of. I guess we all are looking for love in all the wrong places until we figure it out. But no, I guess more literally, this is a story of how I became a chicken head, and I will get to that. But this, you need to hear the whole thing before you understand. So, my parents came from Mexico here to the United States, where we all live now. They made a lot of sacrifices for that to happen. I am their firstborn, and that was, we grew up with a lot of privilege in so many aspects of the word, but not so much in the material sense. But my parents did a really good job of helping us just focus on what we did have. And so material things have never been like important to me, and I think I owe that to my parents for just providing so much more to our souls than just like the material things, and just, they tried very hard. With that being said, I'm the firstborn of immigrant parents. I'm a girl, and we are Mexican. So if you know, you know, but if you don't, I guess I can go into just, my parents are very Catholic, very strict, very traditional, in the sense that just the morals from, like, I wouldn't even say the 50s, like the 40s, just they're still the same, in the sense of like dating and like just a lot of aspects of our life were just not, they were expected to not be like everyone else. And although I grew up in a place where people looked like me and were around the same socioeconomical status than I was, our parents were still a different breed, if you will. It was a little more stricter and a lot more religious than the average family around us. But yeah. So growing up that way, and I'm not blaming my parents or my childhood, but I grew up with really low self-esteem and like a martyr complex that I'm still really like just trying to understand and deal with. Yeah. And also like somewhere along the way of just childhood and teenagehood, whatever, I just kind of gave up on making friends. And I think a lot of that was because I never really, being the oldest and just kind of almost a third parent, I never felt like kids my own age. But it was almost different that like I had people, like I had friends I would talk to, but I never had like intimate friends or like best friends. Because that was just hard. That was just a relationship I was not ever, and still to this day don't really have the energy to invest in. Well, maybe in the near future I will, but yeah, I was just so preoccupied with being a sister and a daughter and doing good in school that it was just too much. And I also was just, I've always been like a very and don't like live in this world. I guess that's so weird to say, but like I always escape through fantasies and just like stories in my head, and it just never seemed to vibe with the people around me. So yeah. Maybe a lot of people can relate, but because from the outside, you know, it's just a girl being normal, and but for me, it was just like I would see my little sister. She was really good with friends. Like she would have like she has best friends that she made since elementary, and that was just never really my case. And my mom's also someone who like has a lot of friendships and stuff, so it was just weird to me, and I always felt like, what's wrong with me? But I'm getting to understand myself a little bit better. But anyways, fast forward to high school. I was in a couple of bad relationships, and looking at hindsight, it was just, you know, high school, and you make mistakes, and they're just high school relationships. And at the time, you feel like it's the end of the world, but if you are in high school, just know it is not. Like, I know everything feels really intense at that time, but you will survive whatever it is that you're dealing with. I don't want to invalidate those who are going through like really, really traumatic stuff. I'm sorry, and I'm here for you. But anyways, so yeah, around junior year, well, yeah, no, actually the end of sophomore year, I started dating my high school best friend. And it was really intense. It was intense for a while because we were super young and we were having these super crazy feelings. And so it was just like it was a lot for really young kids to understand. Looking in hindsight, a lot of like our fights and just our like we were like always like on and off and all these things. Like it was just, you know, teenagehood. But yeah, so call it fate or call it coincidence or call it karma, but we would always just kind of end up like back together. Like we would always float back to each other, like no matter what. And it wasn't that we ever like separated or like anything like that, but it just always seemed like something like pulling us together again. And that's just kind of how that relationship was like. And then right out of high school, I went to community college, which is a great, you know, opportunity for a lot of kids who just still want to do school but don't either financially can't or just couldn't do well in high school to still pursue a career. But at home, it felt like I was failing at everything because my parents had sacrificed so much for me to be here and just to get a career and just do good for myself. And I knew that I still had that opportunity in community college, but my parents didn't really understand that. And a lot of it was, and I'm realizing now, a lot of my failings, not failings, but just things I haven't done right is that I don't communicate with people because I feel like I'm hurting them. Like I would have felt really terrible like telling my parents like, hey, like you guys, like there's a lot of money that has to go into this. And I also felt like I hadn't done good enough in school to ask financial help of them. Like I just didn't feel worthy of putting in that work for myself at the time. So that wasn't doing so I guess home life after high school was hard. And also, if you don't know, or maybe I guess, but traditionally for like Hispanic, or I think Hispanic, well, just people of Mexico and Central America and South America, maybe, I'm not sure, but it is kind of traditional for the girls to not leave the home until they are married, basically, so until someone else can take care of you. So it was just like this weird, I don't know what the word is, but the weird dynamic of just like you're growing up, you have a job, and you're 18 compared like in the world, but then you go home and you're just a child. And that was really weird, and I couldn't wrap my head around that very well. But yeah, so everything else was like, felt like it was falling apart. And the only thing that was going well for me was my relationship to my high school sweetheart. And it was amazing for like that aspect of my life was just amazing because I feel like before I had always been, once again, like martyr complex, like suffering a lot, and I never had anyone I could like actually go to and he was there, and I felt supported and loved. And now when I look back at that year, I'm so glad we had it, because I feel like that was the foundation of a lot of things for us. And yeah, like we just both kind of like leaned on each other when things were just, everything else was falling apart, because that is just such a, you're so young, but you have so much responsibility now. And then for me, it was like I had so much responsibility, but at the same time I was a child, and it was just, it was crazy. So I'm glad I had that year with him. And that was kind of what was going on after high school. So then one day I go to Planned Parenthood because I was going to get birth control. I was just like, you know what, this is a good idea, let me just go. And if you know, when you get birth control, they obviously test if you're pregnant, and I had no doubt in my mind that I was not pregnant. I was like, I'm like, whatever, okay, sure. So I get tested for pregnancy. It turns out I'm positive. I sound like it's a disease or something, but yes, I was pregnant. And exactly at the time that I found out I was pregnant was the time that my significant other found out, was going through something really hard. And I don't want to tell his story, maybe one day he will. But he was going through something really hard. He was dealing with a lot of grief and loss, and he couldn't be there for me in the ways that I needed him to be there for me, understandably so. So that was hard, but I had decided, I was just like, oh, I'm gonna just get an abortion. And I was like, no, at that time, like that was just like, I found out I was pregnant. Okay, like that sucks that I have to go through this, but I'm gonna get an abortion. Like there was just no going about it. Like my parents being who they are, and just not feeling obviously ready for a child, because I don't think you ever really are, but not when you're 19 at the time. Like you're not gonna be ready for a child. So yeah, abortion was the way to go. And I just felt like a failure at that point. Like I felt like a failure. I felt like I was garbage. I felt so ashamed of myself. And that wasn't easy to deal with. But they tell you, I think I was really early on, so they had to give me 3 weeks before they can schedule my abortion. So that was like a lot of time. And I think that for 2 weeks, I was able to just kind of like pretend like it wasn't a thing, until like that last week, I was feeling some of the symptoms of pregnancy. And then the craziest thing happened, which was that my mom found some emails between me and my significant other that just kind of indicated that we were active. And that was the end of her world with me in it at that time. She was very, very ashamed, disappointed. I don't even know like what she was feeling, and I feel bad because I understand that those were her expectations of me. And now I understand that that doesn't mean that that's what I wanted for my life, but that was what she had expected for my life, and that's how she had lived hers, and it was just a lot for her. And things weren't really good between us even before that, so that was just kind of like the nail in the coffin for her. And you know, she told, obviously my dad found out, and I felt garbage was worthier than I at that time. But at the same time, I felt kind of free, in the sense that like I had nothing else to lose. I didn't have to hide anything, and I didn't have to just be an amazing person because they thought I was the worst, and I had no self-esteem to do better. So I was just like, I am the worst, whatever. But at the same time, that was liberating. But also, I kept hearing this like voice in my head where it was like, if you're liberated, like just don't do things out of fear. Like you have nothing to fear anymore about the pregnancy. And me being me, if anyone knows me, I'm like a raging feminist. And not that feminism has anything to do with like not having children, but I was just always like, I'm not gonna have children. I basically raised my siblings. Like I'm gonna have my own life. That was my thoughts until that, like, it was just like this one come to Jesus moment almost, where it's just like, you don't be afraid anymore. Like, are you having this abortion because you were afraid of your parents and the repercussions, or are you having this abortion because you really don't want a kid? And I mean, I guess I didn't really want a kid, but at the same time, I felt like I was like, I'm always someone that believes that like if things happen, they happen for a reason. And so I was just like, you know what? My parents think the worst of me. I'm not sure that I don't want kids, and I also don't know, like, what if this is what's supposed to happen in my life. Um, and I don't like to mess with fate. And this is a disclaimer because this part coming up is a disclaimer because this is not a pro-life video, and I'm not here to tell you to keep your kid at 19. I believe that every woman should have the choice that I had at that time, which was either to keep the kid or not. And I'm also not someone who's going to tell anyone what to do with their body, and I don't think anyone should. So just keep that noted. But anyways, for me, I feel like my whole life I had lived in fear. And in that moment, I just felt, call it pregnancy hormones, I don't know. But I just felt brave. And I was just like, I can't let fear control me anymore. And if I'm pregnant, just scientifically, that means I can have a kid. Not scientifically, but just like, I don't know. It just felt like if this happened to me was because it was supposed to happen to me and I could handle it. And maybe in a lot of senses, I'm still proving to myself that I can do it. But anyways, so I go through with the pregnancy. Mind you, my parents don't know I'm pregnant. They just think I've been deflowered. It's so weird. But and a lot of people might be like, what? Why are her parents so like worried about her life in that sense? But yes, that's just kind of how my parents are. I'm sure a lot of like people like me understand. So yeah, I tell my parents in a letter, because I'm not that brave, but in a letter, I tell them, and then I go to work, and then I come back really late, so I just go to sleep. And part of the whole like disclaimer about like this is not pro-life, at the same time, as much as, you know, I was in shitty situations when I was pregnant, I also had someone, my significant other, who was supportive and responsible. And I had a job and he had a job, and they were shitty jobs, but like I was not alone. And I know a lot of women who are completely alone, and don't have ways of like means to like do better for themselves, and that out of their control kind of thing. So yeah, I wasn't in the worst situation ever, and I can see that now, although I felt like I was during the time. So yeah, I had someone, and it was hard because he was dealing with what he was dealing with, and at the same time, I was just kind of like, boom, you're having a kid. So it was a lot for him to wrap his mind around. My mom wasn't talking to me up until I told her like, hey, I'm pregnant. And she was still not really talking to me, but I was having some like issues, like medical issues, and she just kind of came around, and little by little, like, we never had like a conversation, but she just was kind of like, okay, like I'm gonna have a grandkid. And you know, she did what was best for her, and she knew that she would rather live with me in her life and our grandchild than her grandchild, or rather than me be outside of their life. And my dad, once again, there was never really a conversation had, but it was just kind of understood that they supported me, and I really appreciate that. But pregnancy was really hard, and it was medically, like physically hard on me, mentally. I felt, I think that up until recently, I realized I felt so much shame, which I just feel, oh God, I just feel bad about, because it was just, my child is the best thing that's happened to me, but I was so ashamed of myself. Anyways, so when I hit around 4 months pregnant, me and my significant other, we got a tiny little apartment, but we were just so proud of ourselves. And it was really like the smallest thing, but it was something, you know, for us. And we struggled through that tiny apartment because I was super pregnant, and it was summer, and it was not really like there wasn't AC or anything, so we were like fighting. But at the same time, like, I remember we were fighting a lot during that time, but I also, like, what stands out to me most were like the good moments, and just kind of like the first taste of just us being on our own. But yeah, so then like a little bit down the line, I get a lot of like pregnancy issues. Like, I get contractions really early on in the pregnancy, and just I just couldn't work anymore. So that really sucked, because I was one less income, and we live in the LA area. So rent is really expensive. Although our rent was moderate, it was still a high rent, and we were, working minimum wage-ish jobs. And so yeah, one less income was just really hard. And then things happened where my significant other also lost his job. So we were just two kids who couldn't pay the rent, and that was more shame for me because we had to humble ourselves and we had to ask my parents to let us live with them. And that was hard, but obviously, like, my parents being the good people that they are and just, loving me as best they could, they said of course. And so we moved in, and I was living in my high school room, not working, being pregnant, and just I think my significant other was trying to find, odd jobs here and there, and he was working what he could. And thankfully he got a job like a couple weeks before I gave birth to our baby. So yeah, for the first year of my baby's life, we lived with her grandparents in my high school room, and that was hard on our relationship, on my significant other and I's relationship. Our relationship, it was hard because, my parents are very respectful people, and they tried their best, but it was still like, we were trying to figure out our identity as a family, and there was a whole nother family going on, like, right outside our door. And that was hard. And then just the pressures of a new kid, like, to a very young relationship, that was just, and very young people to add that was a lot. I was lost in motherhood because I the first couple years, and for life, motherhood is so something that is so intense and so hard to do right, but at the same time you can't go wrong if you love the kid and all these things. But yeah, I was lost. I was breastfeeding the child, and the child was a child who didn't like to sleep, as most newborns probably don't. So I was exhausted, and my significant other was working and had all the pressure of supporting a whole family on his young 19-year-old shoulders. So we were really struggling, and it wasn't the worst because I feel like I said, I don't know, like, things just always work where we know everything's gonna be okay, but those moments are just those moments of fear, and you don't know what's gonna happen next. So we found ourselves just kind of like losing ourselves into food and motherhood and work, and we got into these bad habits that just kind of kept us going. So it's not like I'm like, I don't bash ourselves for what we had to go through, because we were just trying to survive, and it was hard, and it's still hard. So yeah, we would just kind of like, for 3 days, like for the weekend, we would just eat out, and it was the best at times that we had, and we would eat out a lot, and we both gained a lot of weight, and that was hard to deal with too. When I was young, I suffered from eating disorders, and just really bad body image issues. So then seeing myself just kind of not have time to do my makeup, or not have time to work out, and not have, like, not look like I used to look, that was another thing I'm still overcoming. And I know it might seem kind of shallow, but it doesn't even feel shallow. It just feels like real life. It just feels like real issues that I wish I see how, like, small they are in the grand scheme of things, but I accept that that's part of who I am. And I'm not a vain person at all. Like, I rarely wear makeup. I've never been someone to do myself up or anything like that, but it was still something I had to wrap my head around. So that was kind of hard, and it still is, but I understand it. Fast forward to when my child turns, I believe 2-ish, maybe a little, no, actually, like, after the 1-year mark, I think, like, a couple months later, we move into the back of my aunt's house, which is right next door to my parents' house. So my parents live here, my aunt and her family live here, and we live in their garage, which is where I grew up, like, my childhood home. So that in of itself is a mind, I just see myself in my child and I see myself in my parents. But anyways, that's a whole nother thing. So yeah, 2020 has been the year of realizing shit. In the iconic words of Kylie Jenner. But I guess I have a couple things to say about like motherhood and just how although I don't really plan on talking about my kid because that's just a whole nother life that is her own. Being a mother has become like a pillar of like to who I am, and it has taught me a lot of things, and I think that's a lot of the like a big thing that saved me and is showing me who I am now. It's that I see my child and how amazing and awesome they are, and just I see how their needs change and I feel like I had to stop shaming myself so much, because once I was like her, once I was whole, once I was happy, and I think that little by little society and just what is expected of us just kind of like takes that light away from us. Somewhere along the line I was taught that who I was not it, if you will, and now I'm realizing that we're all innocent and we're all like children trying to figure out this life, because this is the first time we've experienced it, and I have to be not so hard on myself. And that's why I'm even doing this, because I feel like before I would expected it to be perfect, and now I understand that I don't have the means to make it perfect, but at the same time, like, I still have a voice and I'm still worthy of trying for myself. And then also just motherhood and all the judgment that comes with it has made me just kind of stop worrying about other people, stop judging other people, because if I judge them, I have to judge me, and I just can't do that anymore. So I just kind of was set free by that. Like I can't judge others because I can't judge myself, and that's just has helped me a lot too. So motherhood has helped me a lot, and I understand. I think that's where I was hitting rock bottom, because motherhood was so hard during this pandemic, and just being there for your child and just being what they need is hard, and I was just beating myself up, and it just was not working for me anymore. And that's kind of where the whole like also like health comes in, where I was just realizing that I had gained weight, and that was not the problem, but the problem was I wasn't feeding myself well. I wasn't good to myself. I'm on a health journey where I'm trying to eat more plant-based, and I'm not vegan 100% of the time, but I try to be as plant-based as I can. But I'm also not going to beat myself up if I want something with milk or even meats. Like it's gonna be Christmas, I'm gonna have tamales. Like maybe one day I won't eat any of that, but today that's just what I'm doing. But yeah, that's kind of what I learned about self-love. Like it's hard. It's both things are hard. Either you don't love yourself or you self-love, but I want the outcome of self-love. Like I know that it's a lot of discipline now, but I'm willing to put in that work for myself. And that's what this whole thing is about. Like I'm gonna make videos about my health journey, about just kind of my spiritual journey, my mental journey, just my motherhood journey, in a way where I'm not gonna include my child, just kind of like what it means to me. But yeah, so just thank you for listening to me. Maybe the ending was kind of a little all over the place, but I guess that's because that's where we are right now. I told you about the past, and this is just kind of where I am. I feel good. I feel better than I ever did, and things are still hard, but I'm being more kind to myself, and I'm putting in the work for myself. So yeah, thank you. Oh wait, did you think I was going to tell you about how I became a chicken head? All right, so it all comes together. So this starts when I'm like 4. My dad just always calls me like nicknames, like orangutan, spider monkey, tacuachi, like all these like Spanish, luchadilla, rana parada. Like when I was wearing skinny jeans, when that was the rage, he would call me rana parada, which is standing frog, and it's kind of funny. But anyways, so yeah, I actually like really liked it. Like I guess that was one of the ways he showed love, and he's a very loving guy. Like, but that was how I felt his love, and my mom hated it, and it was just funny because they would always get in fights about this. And then 15 years down the line, when I am 19, I am in his living room holding my child, just playing with her, me and my significant other, just playing with her. And then I think it was either me or my significant other who was like, oh, like we call her Chicken Head. We're like, oh, you're so funny, Chicken Head, or whatever, something like that. And then my dad goes, ¿A quién le dicen cabeza de pollo? Tú eres una cabeza de pollo. And he like points at me, and which means, who are you calling a chicken head? You're a chicken head. And in that moment, I felt loved and accepted, and I was just kind of like, he's defending my child, so he, you know, accepts my life and all these things. But most importantly, it all just came back. It was like a come to Jesus full circle moment. So that is why I'm a chicken head. That is why I'm a proud chicken head. And yeah. All right. Well, I know this is not perfect, and I know that I had a little firewood background noise, and if that's annoying, I'm sorry. But thank you for sitting. If you made it this far, thanks. And just join me. Thank you, everyone, for just listening to what I have to say. And if you felt compelled to join me, then join me.